So you want to sing jazz, but what exactly makes a jazz singer? Hey, what's up? I'm Nicola Milan, and today we are going to look at this. I'm going to take you through the 10 aspects that really make up what it means to be a jazz singer and how that differentiates you from other singers of different genres like pop or musical theatre or soul and all the rest of that stuff. So with that said, let's get into it. Now, these 10 aspects are in no particular order of importance, but I would say that number one is jazz singers improvise. So there's two real parts to improvising. Firstly is using what we call scat singing, which is a form of creating, like using your voice to create nonsense syllables so that you, as a vocalist, can improvise and solo similarly to a saxophone or a trumpet. And so it's using your voice as an instrument instead of just being the singer. So that's one form of the improvisation. And it's super, super fun because it means you can, like, not that you would, but you can literally hog the entire song because you sing the head, then you solo, then you sing the head again and take it out. But no, you will not do that because that's not fair to the rest of the players in the band. But you could if you wanted to. The second part of improvising is changing up the melody and the phrasing and the rhythm. So essentially, you never want to sing things the same way twice. You don't want to just learn a song and then echo that song over and over and over again. It gets boring, especially in jazz because we tend to do a lot of like cover repertoire from the Great American Jazz Book, for example, amazing, really great quality songs, but you can do them to death sometimes if you're singing a lot and you're gigging a lot. So one way to keep it fresh is by just changing the song a lot. Anything is pretty much fair game when it comes to jazz. Number two on my list would be that you can swing as a jazz singer. Now that's that forward motion rhythm. Instead of having the beat emphasized on the 1 and the 3, instead they're emphasized on the 2 and the 4. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, which is a bit it's kind of like a bit plonky. Not that there's anything wrong with that, because you hear it a lot in pop music. But with the swing feel, it's got that cool kind of forward motion. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Da 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 tanga tanga tanga. Do da ba do da ba do 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 ba. It's got that forward feeling motion, and so that needs to kind of come through in a lot of your singing and your rhythm, and your soloing as well. You've got to be able to have that swing feel. Point number 3 would be, and I would say this is actually quite important, is that you use a microphone. Microphone technique is a thing, and it's quite important in jazz as a singer. You have opera, and they tend to not use microphones, although I think everything can be mic'd up these days. But when you're jazz singing, especially, some of the vocal techniques that you use are a lot softer, and the microphone can really help bring out, the small nuances in your voice. And it's all about microphone technique and how close you are and how far away you are, the choice of the microphone as well. For example, I use a stage condenser mic instead of a dynamic microphone because I find that it brings the mid-range tones out in my voice a lot, which tend to get overwhelmed by the lower tones in my voice because I have quite a warm, low voice. And then sound techs, in order to kind of get a little bit more cut through, they just like increase the highs. And it's like, no, we don't want feedback coming through the speakers. Please, let's just increase the mids, shall we? Anyway, so it's all about microphone technique. And so that's another thing that really kind of you would have as a jazz singer. Number 4 on my list is that as a jazz singer, you would really understand music. You are not just the singer, you are an integral part of the band, and you know where you are in the music at all times. The guys aren't necessarily going to cue you when it's time for you to come back in. You've got to be able to hear when it's time for you to come back in. And a lot of jazz, like the structure of the songs that we play, you've got what we call like a form, a head, and it'll go around and around and around and around and around and around and around. And if you don't know where you are in that form, you're going to get lost, and if you come in like halfway through or something because you hear a change, but it's the B section, then you haven't cued the guys that you're going to come back in at the B section, all this sort of stuff. It can stuff up the kind of the vibe, the groove, like who's doing what and all the rest of it. So you really need to know where you are in the music at all times. Number 5 is that you have developed good musical hearing, which means you understand and can hear the chord changes throughout the song. You can appreciate what the instrumentalists in the band are doing when they're playing, when they're changing it up, when they're soloing, and you can join in as well. So if the saxophonist wants to trade with you, you can do that, and you can create solo lines that complement what they're doing and all the rest of that sort of stuff. And it comes down to really understanding chords, understanding your music, like point 4, but having developed excellent musical hearing. Point number 6 is that you understand rhythm. So I suppose the most obvious example of this would be counting the band in. And that's your job a lot of the time. Because in jazz, yes, you can get your own kind of band and work with the same people all the time, in which case sometimes the drummer will do it or the keyboard player might do it. It doesn't always have to be the singer. But quite often, if you're sort of just doing local gigs and things, the jazz players are kind of like getting booked by other singers, or they're doing their own gigs and things, and your regular guy might not be available, or girl might not be available. So you just get someone else in. And then for some gigs, you might have like all completely different players. And so then it's definitely up to you to lead the band. So you're going to count the song in like 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. If it's a Latin, you want to count it in a little bit differently. A 1, a 2, a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, kind of, sort of things like that. And you want to be able to also, not just counting in the band, but switch the rhythm up. Because if you're doing a lot of gigs and, jazz standards, again, you want to be able to change them. And just changing the rhythm of one of these songs, like doing Swonderful as a bossa nova instead of a swing, can make it sound completely different and a lot cooler. So that's, you've got to know your rhythms in order to be able to make these changes. Number 7, you have a sultry, low voice. Okay, this is a little bit of a stereotype. Do not get me wrong. And there are exceptions to this rule. For example, Blossom Dearie, even like a modern jazz singer like Stacey Kent. I love her voice. It's a little bit higher. So you don't have to have the low, sultry voice, but you find it tends to be a thing in this genre. It kind of works really well with the repertoire. And, you do hear a difference between a jazz voice and a contemporary voice. So I suppose, I am being a little stereotypical, yes, but a low kind of sultry, smooth voice is something typical to the genre. Number 8 is that you have a wide range of repertoire from the Great American Jazz Book under your belt. A lot of the repertoire comes from there. It obviously comes from other places as well. It's not just the Great American Jazz Book, but if you want to learn a genre, you've got to get to its roots, right? And that's all those songs. Like when jazz was in its heyday, a lot of those songs were being played, and so you want to listen to how Ella Fitzgerald sang. What did Louis Armstrong do? What did Billie Holiday do? How is Miles Davis playing? And kind of like. Even though some of them, Miles was a trumpet player, he wasn't a vocalist, you still want to kind of like listen to all the different repertoire from the era to kind of, to understand it, get a bit of history behind you. Plus, if you do a lot of jam nights and things, if someone calls Summertime and you don't know Summertime, it's going to look a bit dumb, a little uneducated, so you kind of, there's an expectation that you're going to know like a lot of the general standards. Plus, the other cool thing is that, and this is why it's cool to kind of like listen to, some of the great artists of the day doing their thing. It's cool to quote them as well when you're improvising, because Ella does this like wicked cool scat in one of her songs, and then you kind of like quote a little bit of it and then go back to your own kind of vibe. It's really cool. It's kind of like people, because a lot of the other jazz singers will have heard this stuff and they will know when you're quoting. So it's like, yeah, quote from Ella, yeah. You know what I mean? So yes, that is number 8. You will know a lot of the repertoire from the Great American Jazz Book. We are getting to the end with number 9. You can understand and interpret sensitive pieces of music. So what that means is you can handle more complex chord progressions than the 1-6-2-5. You can listen to them and navigate them because you've developed good musical hearing. You can take a song and deliver it in a way that you're feeling on that day. So if a song is making you're in a really sad mood and the song is making you really sad, then you can deliver it in the way that you want, because you've developed this really great foundation of skills, basically. You can draw on your phrasing, you can draw on your your rhythmic skills, you can draw on improvising the melody, and you can add more air into your tone, you can add more vocal slides and things like that, or fall-offs to make it sound melodramatic and all this kind of stuff. But it's basically, you have a really great command over your instrument so that you can then interpret songs in the way that you want. And last but not least, the last point, number 10, that really kind of, I suppose, solidifies what it means to be a jazz singer, is that you have developed your own personal style of phrasing. Now, Frank Sinatra, for example, was like known for his particular phrasing. And you can recognize voices, but I recognize artists more by their phrasing than their voice. Like Dinah Washington, she has got a specific type of phrasing. She really kind of cuts a lot of her notes off and doesn't hold the notes. As long as someone like Ella Fitzgerald, who would hold the notes, not all time obviously, but like hold the notes longer to the end of the note length and then release them. It's all, about phrasing, the push and the pull of the song and melody, working within, the chord structures and the rhythms that are going on around you. It takes a while to develop your own sense of phrasing, and it can change throughout your career as a jazz singer as well. But I would say that is one thing that can help you to sound uniquely you, is by developing your own unique style of phrasing. So there you have it, my 10 points that really help you kind of, I suppose, to what jazz singers have. If you want to really define the genre, those are the sorts of things that you would expect from jazz singers. I kind of think that, there's sort of things that every singer should really learn, regardless of genre, but you kind of tend to find it a lot more in jazz. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe for extra videos like this. And if you've got another comment, like a point that you feel that, jazz as a genre should definitely have, and if you're a singer, you should have this, hit me up in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic, because, this is just my opinion, so it's not, gospel or anything. Grab your vocal warm-ups over on my website, nicolamilan.com/tutorials. I will just link it below, that's easier. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and I will see you again next time. If you would like to learn more with me, join me in my 6-week Singing Academy, an intensive singing training program for beginner singers. The link is in the description.